Playing in the NFL is tough for anyone.
For the touchdown! Oh my goodness! Oh my God!
The league is mostly filled with the biggest, meanest athletes on the planet. But every now and then, a fun-sized little munchkin defies the odds and becomes a star.
So I walked up there. They had to move the measuring stick all the way down. The whole crowd, whatever, started laughing.
5061.
And these are the smallest players in NFL history. Let's kick things off with Mark McMillan, the smallest dude to ever play defense in the NFL. Listed at just 5'7" and 154 pounds, the little cornerback wasn't getting many looks at college. Probably because you needed a magnifying glass to see the little shrimp on the field. Fortunately for him, back when he was drafted in 1992, the NFL draft had a few extra rounds than it does now. So the Eagles took a chance on the teeny little cornerback in the 10th round. But when he arrived, he came in as the ultimate underdog with a chip on his shoulder bigger than the rest of his body combined. He'd hound NFL wideouts like a little chihuahua nipping at their ankles and managed to play 8 seasons in the league while accumulating a total of 23 interceptions. In fact, in 1997, McMillan snagged 8 picks and brought a league-leading 3 back for touchdowns going the other way. While little guys like McMillan rarely make it into the NFL playing defense, it's a little more common that these cuties get deployed as returners, which leads us to Brandon Banks. Banks was an elusive little returner who was hard to get a grip on at Kansas State University. He was slippery like a wet little fish and could move like the wind. Still, since he was only 5'7" and 145 pounds, no one wanted him come draft time. So Washington decided to give him a chance at camp and realized that he had a whole lot of talent. So they put money on Banks and let him fly as their starting kick returner. Turns out he was well worth the investment. In 2011, Banks led the entire NFL in kick return yards despite being the smallest dude in the entire league. And he's still actually playing professionally today. Brandon Banks, despite being 36 years old and 145 pounds, remains a threat in the Canadian Football League. And guess what? He's the smallest player up there too. And I guess Kansas State doesn't discriminate against little fellas because they gave a scholarship to this next player too. Deuce Vaughn is a teeny-weeny little running back that went to Kansas State University, but boy can this guy dance. He made defenders' lives miserable for 3 seasons in college.
Double deuce! Look out! There's no stopping him!
In his last 2 years alone, he racked up over 3,800 yards from scrimmage and 34 touchdowns. Then Deuce showed up to the combine and measured at just 5 feet 5 inches. Not exactly the prototype NFL scouts are looking for, but when he was sitting in his baby chair, still available in the 6th round of the 2023 draft, the Cowboys decided to snag him up and give him a chance.
With the 212th pick in the draft, the Cowboys chose Deuce Vaughn, a running back out of Kansas State.
Unfortunately, Deuce Vaughn's rookie season was mostly plagued by injuries, but I'm still pretty excited to watch the little firecracker try to earn some playing time for the Cowboys next season. And up next is a player that college programs weren't touching with a 10-foot pool coming out of high school. Next up, we have a pocket-sized running back named Tariq Cohen, who took a particularly tough path to the NFL. When Cohen was in high school, he was 5'6" and maybe 150 pounds. No Division I programs were interested in recruiting him, so instead he went to play in Division II for the North Carolina A&T Aggies. And there, he literally had to do backflips to get noticed. That's right, Cohen made a video of himself doing backflips and catching footballs.
Look at that. Oh my goodness. 2 footballs. That is a standing flip and a double catch.
The footage went viral and even caught the attention of ESPN. From there, he was on the map as far as NFL scouting went, and his program-shattering numbers didn't hurt his case either. By the 2017 draft, Tariq Cohen, at just 5'6" and possibly closer to 180 pounds, got drafted by the Chicago Bears, and he quickly proved to be a dynamic, gadgety game breaker. He broke off big plays with the ball in his hands as a runner and a receiver, but he was most dominant as a punt returner. In 2018, the little guy led the league in punt returning yards and was voted as a league All-Pro. Not bad for a guy that was too small to get a Division I college scholarship. Unfortunately, in 2020, injuries halted Cohen's career, but rumor has it he's attempting a comeback with the Carolina Panthers. As long as man has been skinning pigs to cover their balls, professional football teams have favored bigger athletes. But even back before you or I was born, little players managed to slip through the cracks and succeed at the highest level. I gotta dig way back in the history book books to tell you about the next little football star. His name was Davey O'Brien, a 5'7", 150-pound quarterback that dominated at TCU in the late 1930s. It's rare for short quarterbacks to play in the NFL because they need to see plays downfield over top of some massive offensive linemen. So we have no clue how Davey O'Brien succeeded, since he was a quarterback who was probably at eye level with his offensive line's hairy buttholes. But still, after getting drafted 4th overall by the Eagles in 1939, he immediately led the league in passing yards as a rookie and was named a Pro Bowler as well. But despite his stardom, O'Brien decided to leave the league after just 2 seasons in order to work for the FBI. I guess being the size of a prepubescent child made him a particularly good spy. And a couple of decades later, another half-dead quarterback starred at the NFL level. Eddie LeBaron, a 5'9", 150-pound quarterback, played at Pacific University when he was just 16 years old. Could you imagine how small the dude was then? He probably had to sit on a stack of textbooks just to see the professor teach. But the little fella was damn good at football. As a senior in college, he led the entire nation in total offense and then fought in the Korean War for 2 years before joining the NFL. Since he was so small and spent time in the Army, LeBaron earned the nickname the Little General. Despite his college stardom, like many other players in this video, LeBaron was passed over in the draft due to his shortcomings. The Redskins snagged him in the 10th round, which turned out to be a steal. In his first season as a pro, LeBaron won Rookie of the Year before carving out a long career as a 4-time Pro Bowler in the NFL. When his playing career was over, he became the general manager of the Atlanta Falcons, who realized that this guy must understand the game at a high level if he was able to play for so long while being the smallest QB in the whole league. These guys are inspirations, aren't they? And if you love watching undersized heroes prove that anything is possible, hit that thumbs up button and subscribe to DropKick. Because we don't just give props to the superstars, we also shout out the little underdogs like Gerald McNeil. It's rare for men born in Germany to grow up to become an NFL player. It's also rare for men under 150 pounds to play in the NFL. So Gerald McNeil's career was as improbable as they come. The 5'7", 145-pound receiver and return specialist played 5 years in the NFL from 1986 to 1990 and even earned Pro Bowl honors during 1987. In the 1980s, there was a massive player named William Perry. Since he was so hard to tackle, he earned the nickname Refrigerator. McNeil was tough to tackle as well, not because he was huge, but instead because he was so small it was tough for defenders to get their hands on him. So he earned the nickname Ice Cube because he was like a mosquito in comparison to Perry. You know, maybe Ice Cube was actually a reference to members who get smaller in the cold. I know I've had to deal with shrinkage at the most inopportune times. But enough about me. Next up, we have a little player who couldn't use cold as an excuse for his lack of length, because he played most of his career in sunny Miami. Before the likes of Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, the Dolphins already had a vision of being the fastest team in the NFL. So in 2016, they drafted the super speedy, extra tiny Jakeem Grant out of Texas Tech. And despite being only 5'6", Grant had a hell of a career. He broke the Dolphins' record for career punt return touchdowns, career total return touchdowns, and longest punt return in franchise history. Then he got traded to the Bears, where he returned a punt 97 yards for a touchdown.
Grant, look at him go again down the sideline. Does he stay in bounds all the way? He will. 97 yards for a touchdown.
The return broke the Bears' all-time record for longest punt return, too. To make it in the NFL as an undersized player, you got to bring a little something extra. Something that differentiates you from your regular bigger players. And up next is a player that paved the way for a generation of pass-catching backs. In the 80s, the Chargers had a little Timbit-sized running back named Lionel James. But what James lacked in size, he made up for in heart and talent. James was nicknamed Little Train because no matter what was put in front of him, he just kept chugging along. And his playing style was revolutionary too. Back in the 80s, most running backs were known to pound the ball up the middle on handoffs. Little Train, however, was mostly a receiving running back, which was quite unique at the time. In fact, the 5'6", 170-pounder made 86 catches with his tiny little baby hands in 1985, which at the time set the record for most by a running back in football history. Lionel Little Train James sure broke the stereotype about what people say about a man with little hands. And if you think it would be tough for a 5'6" man to play NFL, then you'll love this next story about a player that was even shorter than that. When you think of holidays and tiny little helpers, what's the first thing you think of? If your answer was Trindon, props to you. Cause while elves are impressive, they got nothing on Trindon Holiday. At only 5'5", Holiday used his dynamic feet to get a scholarship to LSU, one of the most prestigious football programs in the entire NCAA. And despite being just a schmeckle on the field, he stole the show as a return man and got drafted by the Houston Texans in the 6th round of the draft. In his sophomore season, he led the entire league in return yards, playing for both the Texans and the Broncos. Holiday's NFL career only ended up lasting 4 seasons, but come on. What more could you ask of a guy that needs to grab a chair in order to put his pizza pocket in the microwave? Some of these dudes carved out nice little roles, but up next we have an undersized player who was one of the best in the entire league. Wes Welker didn't exactly profile as a star receiver on paper. He was a little 5'9" white dude from Oklahoma who wasn't even particularly fast, but he was a shifty little route runner that could spin defenders around like spaghetti as a slot receiver. Throughout his career, Welker became a favorite target of both Tom Brady and Peyton Manning. And one time he showed up to the Kentucky Derby high as a frickin' kite on Molly, handing out free money. I bet some fans thought he was a jockey that just won the race. I mean, he looked more like a jockey than an NFL football player, didn't he? Next up, we have a player that definitely wasn't committing crimes. Cause if he broke the law, he would have never been allowed to leave the country. And therefore, he wouldn't have paved his unconventional path to NFL stardom. Doug Flutie is one of the greatest underdog stories in sports history. We mentioned how difficult it is for quarterbacks to play in the NFL if they are shorter than 6 feet. Well, Doug Flutie was listed at 5'10", but there is no way in hell he's actually an inch taller than 5'8". In college, Flutie was spectacular and even won the Heisman Trophy as the quarterback for Boston College. But still, since he was a puny quarterback, he slipped all the way to the 11th round of the draft, making him the lowest drafted Heisman Trophy winner in NFL history. And when he finally got his chance at the NFL level, things didn't really go his way. If he was 6'2", teams might have been more patient with him. But if you're Flutie's height and you underperform, adios amigo. Or maybe we should say, welcome to Canada, eh bud? Because after faltering at the NFL level, he decided to play in the Canadian Football League where he became the greatest player in league history. Flutie won the league's Most Outstanding Player award 6 times, and also won 3 Grey Cups given to the champions of the league while playing for 3 different Canadian teams. After becoming a national hero up north, the Bills decided to give him one last chance at an NFL career at the ripe age of 36, and Flutie didn't disappoint. In 1998, Flutie tore up the league and was voted as an All-Pro and also earned the Comeback Player of the Year award. And he stuck in the league until he was 43 years old, where he famously made an NFL play that my channel pays homage to. You guessed it, in 2006, Doug Flutie hit the only drop kick the NFL has ever seen since the year 1941.
Drop kick for the extra point. It is up and in. Can you believe that?
Let's be real, guys. Nothing is more legit than a good old drop kick. Besides maybe Steve Smith, because that dude was straight up legit. Steve Smith wasn't the smallest player in the league, but he was definitely undersized and had such an unbelievable career that I just had to mention him in this video. At 5'9", Smith was small by receiver standards, but was one of the toughest little badasses in the entire league for a very long time. When he was first drafted, the Carolina Panthers deployed him as mostly a return specialist, where he became a pro bowler as a rookie. But it wasn't long before the Panthers realized he could be a dynamic weapon on offense as well. Smith dominated defenses with freakish talents in a pint-sized package. In 2005, he led the entire league in receptions and receiving yards. He is undoubtedly the best wide receiver in Carolina Panthers history, but he's more than that. Steve Smith, despite his lack of size, is one of the greatest players to ever play. As of now, Smith is retired and ranks 8th all-time in receiving yards. And no receiver under 6 feet tall in NFL history even comes close to him on the all-time list. And the next player in this video played in the NFL for even longer than Steve Smith. Darrell Green, much like Smith, isn't the smallest player ever, but at 5'9" and 180 pounds, he was undersized, especially for a defensive player. Green called himself an itty-bitty man, but he is more famously known as the Ageless Wonder because he played longer than any other defensive player in NFL history. What Green lacked in size, he made up with burning speed. The little fella was like a bullet on the field that played 21 professional seasons, including 7 Pro Bowl seasons and 2 Super Bowl titles. It's crazy to think that a player that small could play defense in the NFL, but speed makes a difference. However, up next we have a little player who wasn't most famous for his speed. He was known as a ferocious hitter. At 5'8", Bob Sanders, also known as the Hitman, made his mark in the NFL playing safety. Even though he was usually the shortest dude on the field, Sanders was also the most powerful hitter. He probably shattered more kneecaps in his heyday than any other player in the league. In 2006, he helped lead the Colts to a Super Bowl, and the following season won the Defensive Player of the Year award. And if you think it's crazy for someone that small to play defensive back, wait until you hear what position this next player shined at. Sam Mills was only 5'9" and played linebacker in the NFL. And he didn't just play, he was flat out dominant, earning 5 Pro Bowl selections before eventually getting inducted to the Hall of Fame. But like many in this video, it wasn't an easy path for Mills. Coming out of high school, major college programs laughed at the idea of rostering a 5'9" linebacker no matter how good he might be. He ended up going to Montclair State College, where he made the football team as a walk-on. And he was so good that his head coach Fred Hill tried to do everything he could to get NFL scouts to look at his highlight tapes. The problem was that no matter how impressive his tapes were, no team was going to even consider him because of his size. So like Flutie, he took his talents up north to try to play in the Canadian Football League. But he couldn't even crack the roster there. He got cut in training camp by the Toronto Argonauts, and it seemed that no matter how good he was, no professional team was going to give him a shot. However, he was eventually given a shot in a former league called the United States Football League with the Philadelphia Stars. There, he earned the nickname Field Mouse and earned a reputation as the mouse that the elephants on the field wanted nothing to do with. Mills became arguably the best defensive player to ever suit up in the USFL and helped the Stars win the league championship. After winning the ship, the Stars head coach Jim Mora was offered the head coaching job for the New Orleans Saints, and he packed Sam Mills in his carry-on duffel bag for free and gave him an NFL shot. From there, the rest is history, and Mills remains the shortest linebacker to ever earn a spot in the Hall of Fame. Clearly, scouts have got to do a better job. Just because a dude is small doesn't mean he can't pack a punch, and Mojo definitely proved that. Maurice Jones-Drew was mighty short at 5'7", but he was built like a bowling ball, and he played like it too. After getting drafted by the Jaguars, Mojo rolled his way all over defenses, becoming one of the best running backs in the league. In 2011, he led the entire NFL in rushing yards, and he wasn't a one-trick pebble either. In a game against the Chargers, he sat Sean Merriman, one of the biggest, baddest linebackers in the NFL, flat on his ass with a pancake block.
And this, my favorite play of the entire season. Wow, by Maurice Jones-Drew.
The play proved that even though Mojo still keeps plenty of outdated telephone books at his house, he was one of the scariest dudes in the NFL. But when we think of tiny NFL stars, no one quite stood out like Darren Sproles. Darren Sproles also went to Kansas State University, a school that clearly thinks that size doesn't matter. And even though the girls on campus aren't thrilled with their recruiting strategies, it has served them well on the football field. Cause Sproles was spectacular, and he remained spectacular at the NFL level. The 5'6" do-it-all star was nicknamed the lightning bug for obvious reasons. No one could catch him with the ball in his hands. At first, he was below LaDainian Tomlinson on the depth chart. Well, he fell below him in all measurements, so he was used as a return specialist. But eventually it became obvious that the lightning bug was one of the toughest players to tackle in league history. Throughout his long NFL career, he dazzled for 3 NFL organizations: the Chargers, Saints, and Eagles. In 2011, he broke the league all-time record for all-purpose yards in a season, and in his career, Sproles racked up the 6th most all-purpose yards in NFL history, behind only Jerry Rice, Brian Mitchell, Walter Payton, Emmitt Smith, and Frank Gore. And he did it standing at just 5'6", which is absolutely wild. Size limitations often cause players to get passed on, but that wasn't the case with a little quarterback that made headlines at Texas A&M. Next up, we have Kyler Murray, who was such an unbelievable athlete in college that everyone wanted him no matter how small he was. Murray is only 5'10", which we mentioned is very small for a starting quarterback. But unlike others in this video, no one was passing on him because he was just so damn talented at Texas A&M. The Cardinals selected him with their first overall pick, and he won Rookie of the Year that season. And 1 year earlier, the Oakland Athletics wasted the 9th overall pick in the MLB draft on him on the slight chance that he might choose to play baseball. To this day, Murray is the first ever player to go in the first round of both the NFL and MLB draft, and although his NFL career hasn't quite taken off like Arizona fans hoped it would, he's still just 26-year-old and packed with upside. But Murray is far from the smallest player to ever play NFL football, which leads me to the final player in this video. Last but certainly not least is a legend so wild it's hard to believe it's true, but it is. The shortest player in NFL history was a man named Jack Shapiro. Shapiro, nicknamed Soupy thanks to his affinity for soup, only played one game for the Staten Island Stapletons in 1929, but get this, Soupy was listed at 5'1" and 119 pounds. And even though he was shorter than some kids in elementary school, he still played NFL football. If that's not ridiculously impressive, I don't know what is. So there you have it, guys. Those were the smallest players in NFL history. If you liked this video, be sure to let me know by hitting the thumbs up button and subscribing to DropKick. And for more entertaining videos about NFL football, check out one of the video links currently on your screen, cause I've got you covered. Thanks again, and see you next time.